What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. We come to you live from our location on this extremely rainy and kind of gloomy Sunday evening. And today's location, much like all the other ones that we talk about on the channel, actually has a lot more significance than the last two locations to me, personally. Not so much professionally, but definitely personally. Today's location for the podcast is the village of Endicott. The village of Endicott was actually formed from two different villages in the town of Union in 1906 when it was merged with the hamlet known as Union Village, and they decided that since there was no difference between the two, that they would just merge the two together. Now, Union Village was situated at the junction of Route 26 North and 17C. And the present location of Endicott was situated between Washington Ave and North Street. The founding for the village of Endicott was a gentleman by the name of Henry Bradford Endicott, who was the founder of the Endicott Johnson Shoe Company, which obviously was a very prominent boot and shoe manufacturing company back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Mr. Endicott also has the distinction of having a school named after him. Obviously, the school is no longer in use. As a matter of fact, the school is actually down on just off of Washington Ave, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. I would like to say, well, actually, I can say that I spent a lot of time in Endicott when I was a child, because I lived in 3 different locations when I lived here in Endicott. The first of which is actually directly across the street from where I'm sitting. The second one is down the street from where I'm sitting. And the third one, I wasn't there very long, but was actually down on Washington Ave. Now, the place that I am sitting in is known as the George W. Johnson Memorial Park. To give you a little bit of a backstory on that, George W. Johnson was the business partner of Mr. Endicott and was named as his partner for the Endicott Johnson Shoe Factory. Financial problems in the late 1900s or the early 1900s forced Mr. Endicott to sell his company to George W. Johnson, and eventually the company ended up going out of business. Around the area, which includes a region known as the Triple Cities, which is Endicott, Binghamton, and Johnson City. The Triple Cities, known as which are the villages of Johnson City and Endicott, and also the city of Binghamton are significant to the growth of Broome County because all three locations either have present or former Endicott Johnson either warehouses or factories. Obviously, present day, about 85% of those warehouses have since been torn down and have been turned into other things. The one that was here in West Endicott was actually demolished about 4 or 5 years ago and was turned into the second location of National Pipe and Plastics. The ones in Johnson City have been demolished and were turned into the BU Nursing School and the Decker School of Nursing, with one of the warehouses remaining, but has since been turned into apartments. I'm not sure if there was any in Binghamton, but if there is, they are no longer there. George W. Johnson and Mr. Endicott, their names are pretty much synonymous with the history of Broome County as a whole, not just based on what they did with their life, but the impact that they left in their legacy. So much so that Mr. Johnson, as I mentioned, actually has a park named after him. There's also, or should I say, there was a school named after him that is no longer a school anymore. I'm pretty sure it's actually up here on the hill behind where I used to live, but I'm not sure if it is apartments or if it is I think it's a temple for something. I don't honestly remember. Why is this person sitting here? What?
Oh.
And other notable things about the area is that these people that founded these areas have streets named after them. As I previously mentioned, that Mr. Endicott used to have a school. Mr. Johnson used to have a school named after him as well. And another one of the prominent figures of the Endicott Johnson Shoe Company, or actually no, he wasn't. Another historic name of the Triple Cities was Thomas J. Watson, who also has a school named after him that is one of the only left in Endicott, aside from George H. Nichols. Thomas J. Watson actually played a much bigger role in the history of Endicott because he was known as the chief executive of the company that became known as IBM, the International Business Machines, which to this day, against a lot of people's better judgment, the IBM campus still remains. And unfortunately, the IBM Corporation went out of business, I think, all the way back in 2004 or 5. And it's been about 20 years since the buildings have been empty. And the village of Endicott recently approved a multi-million-dollar program to demolish the buildings, and here we are almost the end of April and the buildings are still standing. Now, as a historian, as I am, I would not like to see them torn down. But at the same time, I don't like to see them standing because they're eyesores to the village. And I would like to see them turned into something beneficial to the community. But I would also like to see something done as a historical preservation, besides, you know, people's accounts of, you know, their significance to the company or historic records or stuff like that. I want something to be left behind that people can say, oh, this is where IBM used to stand, this, that, and the third. The IBM campus as a whole used to consist of 7 buildings. There was the 3 on the west side, there was the 3 on the east side, and then there was the corporate offices across the street. As of this day, the 3 buildings on the west are the ones that are going to be torn down. The 3 buildings on the right, on the east, have been repurposed for the dual use of the BAE company and as the Huron campus. The corporate office across the street, I believe, is still used in some capacity. Don't know what for off the top of my head, but there's a beautiful clock tower that just got renovated about 10 years ago on the top of it. Absolutely gorgeous. The building to the right of the corporate offices used to be also a warehouse, I believe, and has since been turned into a banquet hall known as the McKinley, which is actually where I had my high school prom back in 2010. As of 2020, now this is really weird for me to say this. I do this in each of my videos just to, you know, accentuate the historical venue of the area. But I always talk about the population. And as of 2020, the population of Endicott was 13,667, which is a lot of people. Most of those people, just like the village, or should I say the hamlet of Endwell, are former IBM workers, are former and present Huron campus workers, former BAE workers, or present BAE workers, and significantly, some of those people that live here in Endicott are also Lockheed Martin workers. A little more of a backstory on that when I do that video, but Lockheed Martin actually used to have a location in Johnson City that was actually moved to Owego when the 2 companies merged. Sorry, I had to take a drink real quick. So lot of history um, here in Endicott. This is actually where my brother lives, and he's actually lived here probably about 3 or 4 years. Um, which is kind of full circle because, like I said, we were here. We came here when we were living here when we were kids, all the way back in like the 1990s. I think it was like 90. I think we lived here from like 95 to 2000. Um, and we spent a considerable amount of time here. Um, my brother and I actually attended the school that's up on the hill. Him and I were in first and second grade, and then he stayed there for second. Um, he stayed there for second and third grade, and I was shifted to George H. Nichols. And then we found out George H. Nichols was closing. George H. Nichols is now an apartment. Um, it's schoolhouses, like school apartments. But George H. Nichols, actually, when it closed down and George W. Johnson closed down, all the kids were going to be went to the new school down on Taft Ave. And unfortunately, we found out we were moving out of the area, so we never ended up going there. We spent, like I said, quite an amount of time here in Endicott for about 5 years. And even now, when I come back here in my 30s, it's amazing how you look around and nothing seems the same anymore, and it really isn't, because almost 30 years after I've been here, there's very, very, very minimal that's still the same. The baseball field that's down here, the Bill and Dorothy Davis Field, I believe this just got a renovation within the last 5 years. The other baseball field that's down at the west end of the park, that just got a renovation not too long ago. The swimming pool that's across the way, that actually got a renovation a couple years ago as well. And what's really ironic about where I'm sitting, actually a very fun piece of trivia for you. When I lived here in Endicott, which I'll show you guys in a couple minutes, the apartment that I was living in actually was not the color that it is now. And that's just one of the differences. However, the parking lot that I am currently sitting in, excuse me, used to be the location of a bar that I actually had a friend of the family that lived above. And when the bar closed down, the bar was actually closed down just before I left Endicott, but remained standing, I think, for another 5 or 6 years. And then it was demolished to turn into a parking lot for the park. Now, with that being said, obviously, this park didn't have a parking lot, which kind of sucked, because there was literally, like, if you didn't live very close within walking distance, you would have to go to one of the side streets and park and then walk into the park. Which, you know, it's a lot nicer now that they actually have a parking lot, because now people can actually come to the park, They can sit in their cars if they don't feel like getting out, or they can like park their car, take their kids and let them run around or whatever. And it's just that much better. So I'm gonna grab my jacket real quick because unfortunately it still is raining. And we're gonna do that little segment where I show you guys around a little bit. Baby, I'm right here. Here. Okay. Do you want your toy back? Do you want a cookie? What do you say? Okay. They give you a cookie. Here. I'll keep him occupied for a little bit. Alright, so another significance about this particular area is I didn't know this until I didn't live here, but the area of Endicott that I lived in is known as the Little Italy district. And it's because this particular area has so much Italian heritage to it that it was so aptly named. So I'm here, and this is the new entrance to the park. This is actually one of 4. All of this, I can show you, like all of this fencing, all the way around, was built when they demolished the bar for this parking lot. The bar actually sat right over here in the corner, and when they demolished it, they decided to build a sidewalk for pedestrians. They built some light posts, and obviously they built the parking lot as well. And then they did all of this fencing. And then they also built this whole walkway that goes down into the actual park. That playground over there is actually the only original playground in this entire park. When I lived here, there was not any other playground, just that one. And this is the Davis Memorial Ball Field that I told you about. This is the newer one that was built a couple of years ago. Over there in the distance is a swimming pool. Over there is the original baseball field. Down there in the distance is another location of the Huron campus factory. And that playground up there is actually at least 4 or 5 years old as well. That carousel, used to ride it all the time, and I loved it. Over there, that big apartment building in the back, that's where I used to live. And right next to that is one of the Italian places, Joey's Italian Pizzeria. And then there is a place over here called the Oaks Inn Italian Cuisine Restaurant. I noticed recently too that there is like Italian drawings around everywhere, which is absolutely gorgeous. Up there in the distance is the New Life. I'm not sure. I do know for a fact that that is the old George W. Johnson School, but I'm not sure if it's a church or if it's a temple or what it is. But I mean, that's pretty much all I got to show you guys around here. But we still have lots to talk about. But I'm gonna hop back in the car because it is raining. And trust me, I don't like the rain. I think it is very insignificant of the fact that last weekend, when I was trying to do my video, I had my nephew and my son. And I'm not saying that it was impossible for me to do my video, but I just didn't feel like getting up and walking around. Hopefully next Sunday, I'm gonna have to do a little bit earlier video, just because I do have to work next Sunday, unfortunately. And hopefully next week's location, when I do next week's video, it'll be nice out so I can actually get out and walk around. But after that, I'm going to hopefully try to be able to go out into the places that I go to do videos for you guys. So I showed you guys up here, the, as they call it, the Italian district of Endicott. Unfortunately, there is more to Endicott than meets the eye, which is really weird because for this being a village, it is not small by any means. Obviously, there's Washington Ave, which is the, I guess you could say Washington Ave is the historic district. Oh, well, actually, Washington Ave would be considered the business district. And then there's also the area around, you know, not Washington. Well, I already said Washington Ave, but there's also, there's Watson Boulevard, Country Club Road, and, you know, 17C, Route 26. You know, there's just so much, as far as area for the village itself. And, I am very proud to say that over the years of my life, that I've been able to, you know, spend a lot of time in most of it. But believe it or not, there is some places, just like all the other places that I cover, there are places still that I haven't been, even though I've been on this planet for almost 32 years. There's actually an area, on the same street here. If you go all the way up the hill, I'm pretty sure is a small hamlet of the village. And it's really weird because it actually took me 31 years, because I went up there for the first time last summer. It took me 31 years to actually go up to that area and realize what was up there, because when I lived here in Endicott, obviously I didn't have a car. My mom didn't drive. And in order for us to get around anywhere, we basically either took the bus or we walked to go to like the grocery store, or to go to school, or, you know, to go to our friends' house and whatnot. We had to find other means of transportation. And that's why I tell people that I talk to, when you have a car, there is so much freedom. You don't have to wait for people. You don't have to rely on other people. It's your time that you have to use, and you're at your convenience. With that being said, like I said a couple minutes ago, I spent a lot of time around Endicott. 99% of it was walking, but also over the 20-some years since I've actually lived here, it's a lot different. A lot of the restaurants and businesses that used to be down on like Washington Ave or North Street, or, you know, anywhere else, they pretty much don't exist anymore. We actually used to have this restaurant called the Acropolis, that was down on Washington Ave, that just recently went out of business, I think last summer. And there was a couple other places, down on Washington Ave that are no longer there or are in new locations. They just recently announced a $10 million revitalization project for Washington Ave that is actually going on, not as we speak, but they were doing some work on Friday. They worked during the week on it. They're replacing piping and redoing the road, repaving the roadways, the sidewalks, adding stuff, and they're just trying to make downtown Endicott and the business district, you know, look lively again instead of all like run down and basically bad. So with that being said, you know, Endicott, just like all the other places that I've been to, I guess you could say, will always play a part in my history and hopefully you guys' history. As much as I don't really get out, I mean, let me rephrase that. I get out quite a bit, but being as I am a parent and I have a family now to take care of and working a lot, it's really, really hard to actually go out and do stuff anymore just because, you know, most of my time is spent working or spending time with my family, but I still go out to places that I've been to and, you know, reminisce about the things that have been and the things that will be. So with that being said, I would like to thank you guys once again for tuning into this video. And maybe next week, I'll bring you guys a more in-depth look. And like I said, hopefully next week it'll be nice out and I can actually walk around my chosen area and perhaps show you guys you know, some of the significance to the area. So with that being said, see you next time at the pond.